Slaying the Goliath of the self, Murdo MacDonald-Bayne. He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. Matthew 10:40, Civilization that had given the promise to man of a healthy, happy, satisfying and full life has led him into the desert of fear and insecurity. The present machine and power age has given to small minorities the tremendous privilege of domination of the individual which, combined with a monopolistic financial autocracy, has put in the hands of a few the power of economic life and death over whole nations. The reaction of the individual is towards the organization of strong protective groups. Thus labor and other councils have been born, heading towards communistic ideals. Civilization, that has given this age advanced medical scientific knowledge, is now striving to cope with an overwhelming breakdown of the health of the peoples of the world. The storehouse of the mind of man had promised a wealth of beauty in word, thought and deed, but man has been deceived and misled and finally deserted in the wilderness of confusion. The failure to maintain mental balance in the face of stress and strain of modern conditions is evidenced by the fact that 1 out of every 5 people enters a mental hospital as a case, and the breakdowns in health are double that number. The spiritual aspect of human life has been broken up and confused in the clash of personalities and is perplexed with the many dogmas and creeds fighting each other in the pursuit of domination, like a raft of logs on a placid river being overwhelmed and scattered by a blast of an invisible hurricane and now caught up in a bank of mud of hate and superstition. Civilization indeed stands accused at the bar of human suffering. Why is this, and what of the future of mankind? The solution is not to be found through conferences, blueprints, or through the substitution of new leaders for old and so on. The solution obviously lies in the creators of the problems, in the creators of the mischief, of the hate and the enormous misunderstanding that exists between human beings. The creator of this mischief, of these problems, is the individual. You and I are not the world as we think of it, for we are civilization, we are the world. The world is your relationship with each other, for the world is not separate from you and me. The world society is the relationship that we establish or seek to establish between one another. The world is the projection of ourselves, and to understand the world we must first understand ourselves. No matter how we might try to excuse ourselves by putting the blame somewhere else, the problem remains the same, the understanding of the self. We must see clearly that the tempo of life we create mostly on the material, emotional and scientific planes has increased during the last decade. The pendulum has swung too far without the compensating balance of a developed mental and spiritual consciousness. Thus the destructive mental outlook of the individual has become a crystallized basis for human reactions. The emotions of fear, envy, greed, selfishness, and vanity have created a confused mental condition which prohibits constructive and creative reactions. The result is the slow but sure outpicturing on the physical plane we see in the world today. Is it not so that the mass of individuals has created higher false values of temporal and temporary things, while only a few seek with ecstasy and enthusiasm the peace, love, and harmony in spiritual understanding? But spiritual understanding only comes through the process of understanding ourselves, which is not an isolating process. To be is to be related, and there is no such thing as living in isolation. It is the lack of right relationship that brings about conflict, misery, and strife. If we can create true relationship in however small our world may be, it will be like a wave extending outwards all the time. If we can bring about a transformation of our relationship with one another, not a superficial, but a radical transformation, then we will begin to actively transform the world which is ourselves. But real revolution is not in accordance with any particular pattern, either of the right or the left, but a revolution of values away from temporal and temporary things and the influences of environment, to values of that which is eternal and ever-present reality. To find these true values that will bring about a radical transformation and regeneration, it is essential to understand ourselves. Self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, therefore the beginning of transformation and regeneration. This understanding is spreading to all parts of the world, but it is not as deep as it should be to become an uplifting force. Because although most of us are discontented, our discontent is merely a channel to bring about a certain result instead of setting us aflame, causing us to question life and the whole process of existence. Therefore it is more important to us to find these things out for ourselves, because self-knowledge cannot be given to us by another, nor is it found in any book, nor is the mere casual wish to find out about oneself of much value. There must be deep discernment of our thoughts, motives, and actions. When the fever of hate abates, we will feel the strength of that which of itself is love, the only influence that will bring in a new world era. Even if it only be a little pebble out of the brook of love at first, it will slay the Goliath of world selfishness and hate. Things that appeal to the five senses mind are not realities, they are misleading and illusory, they are temporary and temporal, and are only of value to the individual, while they are the object of material and emotional desire, which leads to conflict and antagonism. The mind of man is confused with crystallized concepts, conflicts, ideas, dogmas, and creeds, and nationalities that only add further distorted reactions to our experiences. From this basis springs up the race mind, which breeds the seed of war. To follow truth you cannot be tethered, therefore to know yourself there must be the awareness, the alertness of mind in which there is freedom from all beliefs and ideals, because beliefs and ideals only give you a color, preventing true perception. To only pursue an ideal leads you away from what you are, and this is but an escape. It prevents you from discovering what yourself is. If you want to know what you are, you cannot have a belief in what you are not. If I am greedy, envious, violent, merely to have an ideal of non-violence is of little value. But to know that one is greedy and violent, to know and understand it, requires deep perception. It demands honesty and clarity of thought. In this alone there is freedom. So the understanding of what you are, whatever it may be, ugly or beautiful, kind or unkind, the understanding of what you are without distortion is the beginning of virtue. Virtue that merely brings out respectability is not understanding and freedom. Being virtuous and becoming virtuous are two different things. Being virtuous comes through understanding what you are. Becoming virtuous is the covering up of what you are. To merely have an ideal of what you are not is not virtue, but coming face to face with what you are is virtue. Virtue is an understanding of what you are, therefore brings freedom, while so-called virtue is illusion and bondage. If you do not know what you are, what are your hindrances to the expression of reality? Striving to become virtuous will not make you virtuous. Reality can only be found in understanding what you are, and to understand what you are brings freedom, freedom from fear of what you are or what is. Virtue is not a matter of time. Virtue is freedom, immediate release. Is this a matter of time? Are you kind, generous, affectionate through the process of time? Will you be kind the day after tomorrow? Can kindness be thought of in terms of time? Affection, mercy, generosity are the true expression of life. They are the only solution for all our problems, but our so-called virtue cannot solve any problems, therefore there is no virtue in becoming, only in being. Can you say that you have goodwill towards all? But goodwill is essential, otherwise we can never solve our problems. Have your politicians, your leaders, both in religion and commerce, goodwill towards all? If they have not goodwill, how can their followers have goodwill towards all? Then is the use of conferences and the like, without goodwill, which is real affection, and without it we can never solve our problems. So most of us, like politicians and the vast majority of humans, are unkind. They have not got the goodwill that is the only solution to all problems. Since they have not got goodwill, it cannot be a mere question of time whether there will be goodwill tomorrow or 10 years hence. Now if kindness and mercy are not a matter of time, why is it that we are not kind now? If we can understand why we are not kind, this understanding being immediate, now, we shall be kind immediately, now. Then we will forget what nationality we are, to what religion we belong, what our differences are, we will immediately be generous and kind. My intention to be kind is futile if I do not know the cause of my unkindness. Therefore I must know the whole process of my thinking, and upon what my thoughts are built. When I see the falseness of the structure, it will immediately fall away, so the study of oneself becomes more important than becoming virtuous. The world, which is the self, can only be raised in consciousness, in the first instance, by the action of the individual. then the seeker who seeks out his or her own hindrances is helping humanity and will attain the Christ consciousness now in performing a significant part in bringing nearer the kingdom of God on earth. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. He who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Matthew 10:37. Benediction. O eternal beloved, thy nature is born in every soul, yet covered up with the ignorant self. When I discerned the nature of the self that covered up thy beauty, I was freed. Then I found that this freedom alone was virtue. What I thought was virtue was but an illusion in which I was bound, for there is no virtue in the self. But now, O Eternal One, I am free, through understanding myself. Without condemnation, without fear, I found freedom and love. Then I found thee, my eternal beloved. This is my virtue, O eternal and ever-present one. My peace and my love remain with you. Yours very sincerely, Murdo MacDonald-Bayne.